Welcome to Pankinen Financial Perspective with Ashton Pankinen from Pankinen Financial Group. Planning for your financial future means navigating challenges like market volatility, inflation, and retirement income. Pankinen Financial Perspective is here to help by addressing common financial concerns, sharing valuable strategies, and exploring ways you can work toward your financial goals. Now let's get started with Pankinen Financial Perspective.
Hello and welcome to Pankinen Financial Perspective. My name is Ashton Pankinen from Pankinen Financial Group. If you'd like more information about what you hear during our show today, give us a call at 952-873-2703 or visit us online at pankinenfinancial.com. That's PANKONIN financial.com. And while at my website, click on the radio page to check out past shows and to subscribe to our program on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or Amazon Music. Also, while at my page, click the link at the top to get the latest retirement guide. When people think about retirement planning, their minds usually go straight towards savings, investments, and income. But for many retirees, some of the biggest surprises don't come from the markets, they come from healthcare. Healthcare decisions often build quietly over time. They may not feel urgent at first, but they can have a meaningful impact on both finances and quality of life as retirement unfolds. That's why we wanted to spend some time today on this topic. For today's conversation, we'll be sharing insights and statistics from a recent Forbes article called 5 Mistakes Retirees Might Make Regarding Healthcare. The article highlights some common missteps retirees and near retirees can make, not because they aren't thoughtful planners, but because healthcare is one of the more complex and misunderstood parts of retirement. And here to help me with this conversation and keep us grounded and have it relatable is my co-host, Tony Shore.
All right. Wow. Grounded and relatable. I realize, Ashton, that's supposed to be my role here, but usually I end up just talking about pizza while you're trying to educate our listeners on their finances and retirement.
Pizza's important too, Tony.
Oh, it's very important in my world.
Yeah.
But, I want to ask the questions that hopefully people out there are probably thinking, but might not always ask themselves, and make sure we keep it practical, which you're really great at doing, explaining things and helping educate our listeners out there on these things. I know you deal with this every day. You're helping people to retire and plan for these things like healthcare. Before we get into it really quick, how you doing, Ash?
Yeah, been great. We got a warm up coming here. It's going to be in the 50s. It sounds like this weekend. Get some of that. We have, I don't know if you have this where you're at, Tony, but most of my drifts are dirt now. We haven't had much snow cover. And so it's just been blowing topsoil off the farm ground there. And we got some black dirt. We could use some rain to wash it all away, I guess. So
yeah. Well, don't watch out what you hope for.
Yeah,
you don't want it to rain too early. We don't want it to start raining just yet in case we have another cold spell. That just brings more ice. But you're right. We're headed for 50s. I mean, that's shorts weather, shorts and t-shirt.
For sure. Yeah. When you're from Minnesota, that's shorts and t-shirt. Maybe even sandals will come out too,
Oh boy. With socks.
With socks. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, the tall socks with sandals and shorts. Yeah, exactly.
How have you been, Tony?
Oh, I've been good. I've been great. My wife and I have been watching the Olympics, and we really enjoy that. We really have enjoyed watching. I love Winter Olympics are my favorite. I like watching the skiing and the snowboarding and all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I still don't understand curling, but everything else, I love.
You have to go practice. They got the curling clubs here in Minnesota.
Yeah, they
you can go and get trained up and
Okay, so where do you want to begin today?
Yeah, you don't have to be technical to be useful in this health insurance area here, healthcare, I guess. It's more about awareness and understanding where people tend to get tripped up. So we want to make more confident decisions over time. So one of the reasons this topic comes up so often in conversation with retirees and people approaching that retirement age is simple. Healthcare costs create a lot of uncertainty. And so if you're worried about healthcare, what it might cost you in retirement, you're definitely not alone. According to a recent survey referenced in the article that we're discussing today, 2 out of 3 boomer respondents say that the expensive healthcare costs are their top retirement fears. And then more than 2/3 of the respondents were worried that a single large healthcare issue could disrupt their finances for years. And so that tells us something important, Tony. This isn't a fringe concern. It's not just about everyday expenses. For many people, the fear is one that's unexpected healthcare event could throw off their balance in retirement.
Yeah. It really can. And I think people are like, hey, I'll be on Medicare. I don't have to worry about health care costs. Medicare is cheap. But you know what? You still have premiums, co-pays, deductibles, and max out of pocket. And there are a lot of things it doesn't cover. I think, maybe I'm stealing thunder, but the article might mention this, but there's the average couple who's 65 or older lives past 65 will spend an average of over $300,000 on healthcare out of pocket in retirement. That's a lot.
It's a big nugget there.
Yeah. And so I think that kind of worry can really bother people, even if everything else in their retirement plan feels solid.
Yeah, that's right, Tony. But one of the key points the article does make, and one I agree with strongly, is that worry by itself isn't a strategy.
Right.
Feeling concerned is understandable, but it doesn't actually move you closer to clarity or confidence. So what does help is understanding where people tend to go wrong and how better information can lead to better choices when it comes to healthcare. And that's why this article focuses on 5 common mistakes pre-retirees and retirees make when it comes to healthcare. And just as importantly, how those mistakes can be corrected.
So it's not about predicting the future or trying to eliminate every risk.
Right. It's about being informed, asking better questions, and making thoughtful decisions instead of just letting fear drive the process.
Okay. So what's the first mistake you want to talk about?
The first mistake the article points out is not budgeting for increased healthcare costs in retirement. And this is one I see catching people off guard more often than they expect. Many new retirees are surprised to learn that their healthcare premiums and out-of-pocket expenses can be significantly higher than what they paid while they were working. When you're covered under that employer-sponsored plan, it's easy to underestimate just how much cost your employer was absorbing on your behalf. And so again, according to the survey referenced in the article, 40% of retirees don't actually know how much to expect to pay for healthcare in retirement. And so that uncertainty alone can make planning for it much harder than it needs to be.
Yeah. And that's a pretty big gap, especially for something that shows up as a monthly expense.
Yeah, it is, Tony. The issue can be even more pronounced for people who want to retire before they're eligible for Medicare at age 65. For those individuals, healthcare coverage often means purchasing insurance on their own. And then the article notes that the monthly premiums could easily exceed $1,000 per person. And so when you put that into context, it becomes clear why this mistake can matter so much. If those premiums aren't accounted for ahead of time, they can put real pressure on that retirement budget.
And it's not just a technical detail. That can affect the timing of your retirement itself.
Yeah, precisely, Tony. That's why the article emphasizes the importance of understanding whether these healthcare costs will realistically fit into your retirement budget before you decide to retire, not after. It's not about discouraging that early retirement or any specific timeline. It's just about making sure the numbers align with your lifestyle that you're planning for, and that is factored into your customized financial plan. When healthcare costs are acknowledged up front, they become something you plan around. And when they're ignored or underestimated, they tend to show up as an unpleasant surprise.
Yeah, and that's not how anyone wants to start retirement, is it?
Yeah, and that leads us naturally into the next mistake the article highlights.
Well, so if somebody hears Medicare and thinks, okay, that part's handled, that may be an oversimplification, right?
For sure. That's exactly the issue that this article points out, Tony. Many people assume Medicare will work just like their employer-sponsored plan that they had while they were working, but in practice, it's very different. Medicare is made up of multiple parts, and each of those parts has its own deductibles and co-payments. And in many cases, those out-of-pocket costs are higher than what they were when you're paying under an employer-sponsored plan.
Yeah, and that's what I think catches people by surprise, especially if somebody hasn't looked closely at how Medicare actually works. And, it can seem confusing because it's alphabet soup, right? That's what I call it, alphabet soup, A, B, C, D.
Yeah, exactly.
F.
Yeah, it is. It can
I
be
think it skips
confusing there.
E. I don't know. It goes from D to F typically. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's like a bad episode of Sesame Street as a kid, right?
exactly. And our office does specialize in Medicare, and so it's very important to plan ahead for those costs. It's not enough to just know it exists at 65, but you also want to understand how those deductibles and copayments might show up in your budget as you retire. Taking the time to estimate those potential out-of-pocket expenses allows us to see whether it realistically fits within your retirement income plan.
Yeah. And so this really builds on that first mistake, because if you don't account for these pieces, the budget can start to feel tighter than expected.
Yeah, nicely put. Medicare can be a valuable benefit, but it's not cost-free. And when people plan for it thoughtfully, it becomes part of a more complete and realistic retirement picture than an unpleasant surprise later on.
Yeah. And this is where I think a lot of people assume coverage exists, at least until they actually need it.
Yeah, I completely agree there, Tony. One of the most common misunderstandings is thinking Medicare covers all healthcare related expenses, when in reality, there are several important areas that it doesn't cover at all. Medicare doesn't pay for most vision, hearing, or dental expenses. And that includes things like eyeglasses, hearing aids, and dental procedures. And those costs can really add up quickly.
Yeah, that's where costs come in. And I know there are advantage plans or supplemental plans.
For sure.
Some of those plans do cover some of those things. But, Medicare, I can't believe what you just said, Ashton. Medicare doesn't pay for vision, hearing, or dental. And it's not like seniors ever need those things.
Exactly.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Those are the three main
exactly.
things we need as we get older. It's like, okay, the government doesn't want to have to pay out too much money. So they said, what are we spending all this money on? What do seniors spend most money on? Okay, well, eliminate coverage for those things.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Yeah.
I just think that's poor. I think we should have some type of coverage for vision, hearing, and dental. And that's where I do like a lot of the advantage plans, if you can still find them that cover that. And because those aren't rare or unusual needs, they're pretty common.
Yeah, they're very common as you get older. And that's why the article emphasizes the importance of thinking ahead. And you mentioned, maybe getting an advantage plan or something that covers some of those things. So if you expect to have these expenses in these areas, it's important to understand the potential costs and decide whether they'll fit into your retirement budget or possibly in that emergency fund. The article also highlights another major gap that often surprises people. Medicare does not cover long-term care expenses. And according to the survey referenced, only about 1/3 of respondents were aware of that.
Yeah, I think so many people are not. I was not aware of that until my own mom needed that. And then I realized, okay, Medicare doesn't cover it. And that's a pretty big knowledge gap for something that can have such a huge financial impact. My mom's full-time care, she has to have full skilled nursing. It's $11,000 a month.
Yeah, that's definitely
down in Fulda, Minnesota.
Yeah, it's definitely a burden that if you overlook, these uncovered expenses can create a lot of strain later on, especially if it hasn't been factored into the plan ahead of time. Awareness doesn't eliminate the cost, but it does give people a chance to prepare for that thoughtfully.
Yeah. And that means planning ahead isn't just about coverage and budgets. It also shows up in everyday choices.
Correct, Tony. The article makes a point that lifestyle decisions can play a meaningful role in long-term care costs and just overall healthcare costs. So in fact, about half of the respondents in the survey who are age 65 and over said they would advise their younger selves to maintain a healthy diet and take care of their health just to help manage those healthcare costs in retirement. And the takeaway here is that no matter your age, improving things like diet, exercise, and sleep habits can certainly benefit your health and may even help reduce some of those healthcare costs later on.
But it sounds like you don't want to oversell that idea, right?
Yeah, because healthy habits are valuable. There's no guarantee they'll prevent you from some very expensive medical condition. So that's why, again, the article emphasizes balance and making a positive life choices while still planning ahead for healthcare coverage that fits your budget and then being prepared for out-of-pocket expenses as well. Healthy habits can be part of the picture, but they shouldn't replace thoughtful planning. Both do matter. I want to talk a little bit here also about just enjoyment in retirement too. I've got a client who's like, "Hey, you going anywhere this winter?" I asked him, and he said, "Well, the neuropathy in my feet, I don't like hiking. I don't like going places as much as I used to." And so not just on a financial side, but just enjoyment of retirement, having that healthy living helps.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, your health is so important. You want to be able to enjoy retirement. It makes a big difference. Now, before we keep going with our conversation today, Ashton, let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you. I know you're offering a no charge, no obligation consultation, correct?
Yeah. Again, our office specializes in Medicare and healthcare. And we can fit that into your budget and your plan. And so one of the best things to do is just give us a call, 952-873-2703. Again, that number is 952-873-2703. Visit us online at pankininfinancial.com. That's PANKONIN financial.com. And scheduling a consultation only takes a few minutes, and we're always happy to work around your schedule.
That's great. Now, back to today's topic. I think this feels like the point where a lot of people try to do everything on their own.
It does. And the article is pretty clear about what the data shows here. According to the survey, retirees who work with a financial professional are far more likely to have a plan for healthcare costs in retirement. In fact, the ones who work with a financial professional were more than twice as likely to have a plan to pay for their healthcare costs in retirement compared to those who don't. And they were also twice as likely to have estimated what those costs actually may be.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's important. It's a pretty stark difference, isn't it?
Absolutely. And yet today, only about 1/3 of respondents report that they've worked with a financial professional. And so there's a real gap between what seems to be helpful for them and what they're actually doing. So that said, they also point out that a financial professional isn't just automatically enough. Not all financial professionals help their clients plan for this healthcare costs in retirement. And so again, you want to make sure you find someone that will factor those into your plan. One of the smartest questions someone can ask a potential financial advisor is whether they help develop a plan to manage healthcare costs in retirement. And that topic needs to be part of the conversation, not an afterthought. The article also wraps up that addressing all 5 of these mistakes can feel like a lot of work, but ignoring them can lead to some very real consequences. It said that high medical expenses in retirement could force some to cut back on travel and other non-essential spending, possibly even take on a part-time job or even just cut healthcare coverage altogether.
Wow. Well, and that brings it full circle because these aren't abstract planning issues. They affect day-to-day life, don't they?
Yeah, that's for sure, Tony. Planning ahead for healthcare costs isn't about perfection. It's about giving yourself more choices, more stability, a better chance to maintain both your financial well-being and your quality of life throughout retirement. So let's just keep this conversation going, and we're going to switch and look at a different article here. CBS News article headlined 5 Smart Ways to Manage Healthcare Costs During Retirement. This piece builds nicely on what we've already discussed by shifting from common mistakes to practical strategies.
Yeah. And that's important. That shift is helpful once you understand where people tend to stumble. It's reassuring to talk about what you can do instead.
Yeah, it's the article talks by acknowledging something people may feel. Retirement planning can be exciting, but it can also be overwhelming. The idea of retirement itself is appealing, but saving enough, planning well enough can feel like a heavy lift. And one of the points it makes early on in this solid retirement plan is more about and it's not just about account balances. It's lining up neatly on paper. It's once you factor in things like healthcare, the picture can become more complex. The article points out again, while Medicare can help cover some healthcare expenses in retirement, it doesn't cover everything. Figuring out how to address those gaps and how it works is what matters. Healthcare costs are rising. We've all seen it. And without thoughtful approach, medical expenses can put real pressure on a retirement plan. And so again, that's why the article lays out 5 strategies retirees and pre-retirees can consider to manage those costs more effectively.
Sure. So instead of just pointing out the risks, this is where the conversation turns towards actual solutions.
Correct, Tony. And the first strategy in the article that they highlight is purchasing long-term care insurance, or a hybrid long-term care insurance. It can be a significant expense in retirement, long-term care, particularly if someone needs help with those activities, daily activities due to illness, disability, or just that natural aging process. These policies are designed to help cover costs associated with things like nursing homes, assisted living, or in-home care. Some policies may also help cover hospice or other long-term care related services.
And timing seems really important here.
Yeah, it is. The number of times I have somebody come to me that needs it and wants to get coverage, but it's too late. Premiums are largely influenced by age and health status. So you want to make sure you look at this before you need it. Securing a policy earlier can mean more favorable premiums and then having a safety net in place if care is needed later on.
Well, that's one way people can plan for a very specific risk, but it's not the only tool in the toolbox, is it?
No, the next strategy focuses on health savings accounts, or HSAs. These accounts offer tax advantage ways for medical expenses before and during retirement, as long as someone is eligible to contribute. So HSAs allow tax deductible contributions, tax-free withdrawals for qualified medical expenses, and unused funds can roll over from year to year. And so over time, that flexibility can help build a meaningful healthcare reserve.
Yeah, because it's like it's basically like a Roth IRA on steroids, right? It's actually the only IRS tax designation for an account that allows you to put the money in tax-free and get a tax break on that money this year. Then it grows tax-free. So you get to experience compounding interest and growth. It can be invested within that. And then when you pull it out, it comes out tax-free. If you use it on healthcare expenses or pharmacy expenses, there's a lot of things that are covered, and you can save it for retirement. I think the good news here is it's not a use it or lose it situation. And even if you have to pull it out, like, all my medical expenses are covered, or I didn't end up using it, then you can pull it out. And if you pay tax on the money, it works just like a traditional IRA, right? Yeah.
And again, like you said, it's not a lose it or use it situation either. So in retirement, those funds can be used to help cover Medicare premiums, deductibles, co-payments, or even long-term care expenses. So the article positions HSAs as a very versatile tool for managing healthcare costs over time.
So for people who want even more predictability, there are ways to address the gaps Medicare leaves behind, correct?
Exactly. And you brought it up earlier a little bit too, but another option is Medicare supplemental insurance or Advantage plans, often referred to as Medigap. While Medicare provides essential coverage, it doesn't pay for anything. So Medigap policies are designed to help cover things like co-payments, deductibles, co-insurance, and traditional Medicare leaves behind.
Yeah. So really, this is about reducing surprises.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it, Tony. Medigap offered by private insurers often come in different levels of coverage. Choosing a plan that aligns with your needs can help manage those out-of-pocket expenses and add predictability to healthcare spending in retirement. The article also points out that some employers offer health reimbursement arrangements, or HRAs, as part of their retirement plans. Or retirement benefits, I guess. An HRA is funded by the employer and can be used to reimburse qualified medical expenses, including those Medicare premiums and other insurance costs.
Right. But not everyone will have access to one.
Very good point there, Tony. And that's why the article emphasizes that understanding the benefits that exist, and if it does, how it works. When used effectively, an HRA can provide another layer of support for managing healthcare expenses in retirement. And the final strategy the article highlights is focusing on prevention and accessibility. Many insurance plans now offer those telehealth services, which allow people to consult with healthcare professionals from home. And this can save time and potentially reduce costs by addressing issues earlier rather than later.
Yeah, through my wife's plan, they have something called, I think it's NICE, and it's just been amazing. You can call, talk to a doctor, get prescriptions, and it's all free. They'll come to your place of business and take blood samples and things for labs.
That's nice. Convenient.
Yeah, it is unbelievable, really, what they do. Or if you needed a vaccination or something, they'll come to where you're at and do it. I think that type of thing is becoming more popular, and that ties into preventative care as well, doesn't it?
It does. Staying proactive with regular checkups, those screenings, those vaccinations can help identify potential health concerns earlier when they may be less costly and easier to manage. Prevention doesn't eliminate risk, but it can help reduce the likelihood of more expensive treatments down the road. Yeah, the article's bottom line is that navigating healthcare costs in retirement takes a thoughtful, proactive approach. You want to combine strategies like long-term care insurance, HSA, Medigap policies, Advantage plans, HRAs, and preventative care. Retirees can build a more resilient healthcare net in retirement, that safety net. And at the same time, it's important to evaluate your own needs and circumstances. There's no single solution for what works for everyone, but planning ahead helps protect both retirement savings and quality of life.
Yeah, I think that's important, and it really reinforces what you've been saying throughout this episode, which is that healthcare planning isn't a side topic. It's central. I mean, really, healthcare costs and taxes are probably a lot of people's biggest expenses in retirement.
Yeah, I would say that probably makes up half of most people's expenses between taxes and healthcare costs.
Yeah.
So it's important to make sure you have that as part of your plan.
Yeah.
And again, when healthcare is addressed initially, it becomes part of the retirement plan. It's designed to support not just longevity, but stability and that peace of mind in retirement.
Yeah, and that's huge. And I think you've given us a lot to chew on today, a lot to think about, Ashton. Sure. It's been a great show. Do you have anything else for our listeners out there before we sign off?
We have healthcare specialists in our office that work in Medicare. And for those that are under 65, we have the ACA plans as well. So just private health insurance. And so we understand that strategy and the costs that go into it. And, part of the plan, we want to include what we expect for those expenses. And then again, we're creeping up on tax time here, tax filing deadline. We've got some great options to help with either reducing those taxes and this year or, hopefully in the long-term retirement plan as well. And so if you have questions about retirement and with your financial strategy, visit our website, pankoninfinancial.com. That's PANKONIN financial.com, or call our office 952-873-2703. Again, that number is 952-873-2703. We'd love to help you protect your savings and feel confident about the road ahead.
All right. Thank you so much, Ashton. And listeners, thanks for tuning in. That does it for today's episode of the Pankonin Financial Perspective with our host, Ashton Pankonin.
Thank you for joining us for Pankonin Financial Perspective. Don't head into retirement without a plan for both your finances and your health. For more information, contact Ashton Pankonin at Pankonin Financial Group at 952-873-2703 or visit pankoninfinancialgroup.com. Join us again soon for another episode of Pankonin Financial Perspective. Advisory services are offered by Ashton Pankonin LLC DBA Pankonin Financial Group, an investment advisor in the state of Minnesota.
All matters discussed during the show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation. We are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration, the Federal Medicare Program, or any other government agency. Calling this number will direct you to a licensed sales agent.